Michael Landon, the star, the writer, the producer, the director, my husband. He was carrying a full load.
She stayed silent for over 40 years, smiled for the cameras, played the perfect TV mom. But at 82 years old, Karen Grassle finally said the words she had been holding inside for decades, and nobody was ready for them. The woman who brought Little House on the Prairie into millions of homes had a very different story happening behind the scenes, one involving Michael Landon. And once you hear it, you will never see that show the same way again. Most people think they know Karen Grassle. They picture the bonnet, the warm eyes, the steady, unshakable mother standing in the doorway of that little house on the screen. Caroline Ingalls, Ma, the emotional backbone of one of the most beloved shows in television history. But that woman, the real Karen Grassle, was somebody else entirely. Before the Prairie, before the bonnets, before the millions of fans who wrote her letters like she was their actual mother, Karen was a serious actress, a trained stage performer. She had studied abroad in London. She had put in years on the theater circuit, doing the kind of work that doesn't make you famous, but makes you good. Really good. She didn't come to Hollywood chasing stardom. She came to do meaningful work. And then Little House found her. When the role of Caroline Ingalls landed in front of her in 1974, it looked like everything she had been working toward: a major network show, a steady paycheck, a character with real emotional depth. She said yes, and just like that, her life changed overnight. But here's what nobody talks about. Karen Grassle was also an intensely private person. She didn't do gossip. She didn't do drama. She showed up, gave everything to the performance, and kept her personal life completely locked away from the public. That discipline, that wall she built around herself, would protect her in some ways, and quietly destroy her in others, because something was happening on that set, something that left marks on her that no one could see. Not in the interviews, not in the behind-the-scenes photos, not in any of the warm, cheerful stories that made their way into the press. She carried it alone. For years. For decades. It wasn't until she sat down to write her memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, that she finally let it out. And what came pouring onto those pages shocked even the people who thought they knew her story. What she revealed wasn't what anyone expected. Not even close. Now, to understand what Karen went through, you have to understand one thing first. Michael Landon was not just her co-star. He was the show. In the 1970s and early 80s, Michael Landon was one of the most powerful men in Hollywood television. Handsome, magnetic, the kind of person the camera couldn't get enough of. To the public, he was Pa Ingalls, strong, loving, the ideal father figure. Families across America trusted him, adored him, and that image, it never cracked. Not publicly, but Karen Grassle had a front-row seat to a different version of Michael Landon. She saw him 5 days a week on set for years, and what she saw was a man of enormous talent, wrapped in enormous control. He produced the show. He directed it. He wrote for it. He starred in it. He was everywhere, in every decision at every level. What Michael Landon said went. No discussion. No debate. The end. Now, Karen is careful in her memoir. She doesn't paint him as a monster. She says he was brilliant, genuinely creative, sometimes even generous. But there was another side, and that side made her feel invisible. There were moments, whole stretches of time on that set, where Karen felt less like a co-lead and more like a piece of furniture. Present, necessary, but not really seen, not really valued, not really heard. She was playing the emotional heart of the show. She was in almost every single episode, and yet the decisions were never really hers. The direction was never really shared. The power was always somewhere else. She tried to speak up, quietly at first, the way she did everything, and then, when the quiet wasn't working anymore, she pushed harder. What happened when she finally did that changed everything on set. But the moment that truly changed everything, the one that hit her like a wall, hadn't happened yet. Here's a fact that should have made headlines back then. It didn't, but it should have. Karen Grassle was the female lead of one of the highest-rated shows on American television. She was in nearly every episode. Her face was on the magazine covers. Her character was the emotional spine of the entire story. Millions of mothers across the country saw themselves in Caroline Ingalls, and her paycheck didn't come close to reflecting any of that. The gap between what Karen was earning and what Michael Landon was making wasn't just unfair. It was staggering. The kind of number that, when she finally understood the full picture, must have felt like a slap. Now, Hollywood in the 1970s was not exactly known for treating women fairly. That part isn't a surprise. But what made Karen's situation different, what made it personal, was that this wasn't some faceless studio making the call. The man controlling the money was the same man she worked with every day. The same man who played her husband on screen. The same man who smiled for the same cameras she did. She went to renegotiate. She asked for what she was worth. And the process that followed was not professional. It was not respectful. It was a power struggle, slow, grinding, and exhausting. The kind that doesn't leave bruises you can show anyone. She was locked into the contract, locked into the character, locked into a version of herself that the show needed and that she was slowly outgrowing. She wanted more. Creatively, professionally, financially, and every time she reached for it, she felt the walls close in a little tighter. The prairie was starting to feel like a cage, and the thing that haunted her most wasn't the money. It was the silence around it, the way she had to smile through it, the way she had to keep showing up, keep performing warmth and strength and grace, while quietly fighting a battle that nobody around her could see. She had nowhere to put it. No one she could fully tell. Not yet. Picture this. A long day on set has just ended. The cameras are off. The crew is packing up. Everyone is laughing, talking, heading home. And Karen Grassle is sitting alone, tired in a way that sleep can't fix, falling apart so quietly that no one in that room even notices. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Little House had become a cultural institution by this point. Fan mail arrived in mountains. Ratings were through the roof. Every week, millions of people tuned in to watch the Ingalls family, and Karen was right there at the center of it all. But behind that image, something was breaking. She had started drinking. Not on set, not in some dramatic, visible way, just quietly in the hours after the camera stopped, when the pressure of the show, the weight of the battles she was fighting, and the loneliness of carrying all of it alone became too heavy to hold sober. It crept in slowly. That's always how it works. And it started affecting everything. In her memoir, Karen doesn't hide from this. She doesn't dress it up or make excuses. She just says it plainly. She was a woman under enormous pressure with very little support, trying to hold herself together, while playing week after week the role of the most unshakable woman on television. Think about that. The strongest TV mother in America, quietly coming apart at the seams. Meanwhile, her relationship with Landon had gone cold. Not explosive, not dramatic, just cold, professional on the surface, frozen underneath. Tensions that lived in the silences between takes, feelings she couldn't voice, a slow, mutual drift that was making every day on set feel heavier than the last. And then came the ending she never chose. She didn't walk away from Little House on her own terms. The exit was messy. It was painful. It left wounds that would take her years and a lot of hard work on herself to even begin to heal. But the real reckoning, the one that made fans around the world cry, was still ahead. After Little House ended, Karen Grassle did something that Hollywood rarely sees. She quietly disappeared. Not dramatically. There was no public breakdown, no tabloid disaster. She just stepped back, went back to the theater, worked on herself, rebuilt her life piece by piece, away from the spotlight that had both made her and worn her down. And she never, not once, spoke publicly about Michael Landon. Not in interviews, not in reunion specials, not even in 1991, when Landon died of pancreatic cancer at just 54 years old and the tributes poured in from every corner of the entertainment world. She stayed silent. Fans noticed. They wondered, why wasn't Ma out there sharing stories like everyone else? Some thought she was just private. Some assumed they hadn't been close. Almost nobody guessed the real reason. The silence had weight. It was a choice, and it cost her something. Karen writes about what it felt like to carry an untold story while the world had already written its version. Every documentary, every tribute, every time a fan said, Michael Landon was such a wonderful, warm human being, she would hear it, and she would say nothing, because her version of the story was more complicated than that. Here's the thing, and this is important. Karen is not trying to tear his legacy apart. She says that directly, clearly more than once. She acknowledges his talent. She acknowledges the things he built. She holds both truths in her hands at the same time, but she refuses at 82 years old, with nothing left to prove and nothing left to protect, to keep shrinking her own experience to make other people comfortable. She earned her truth, every difficult year of it, and she finally claimed it. What she says next, in the final pages of her memoir, is the part no one was prepared for. This is the part that broke people open. After everything Karen Grassle had been through, the pay gap, the power imbalance, the drinking, the painful exit, the decades of silence, you might expect the end of her story to be angry, or bitter, or, at the very least, sharp. It's none of those things. In the final chapters of Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, Karen talks about grief. Not grief for the career she lost, not grief for the recognition she never got. Something deeper, something that almost nobody saw coming. She grieves the relationship that could have been. She and Michael Landon spent years of their lives together. They built something that touched generation after generation of families. And somewhere inside, all that tension, all that friction, all those cold silences on set, there were also real moments. Creative sparks, genuine laughter, a thread of mutual respect that never fully broke, even when everything around it did. She never got to tell him that. He died in 1991, and the conversation she always imagined having, the honest one, the real one, never happened. It never got the chance. She writes about wishing just once they could have sat down together, not to fight, not to relitigate the money or the power or the pain, just to say, I saw you. You saw me. It wasn't perfect, but it mattered. That's it. A few lines. And those lines are what made readers put the book down and cry. Because it's not a takedown. It's not a revenge story. It's something so much more human than that. It's a woman at 82, sitting with the full weight of her life, every scar, every regret, every moment she stayed quiet when she should have spoken, and choosing at the end of it all grace over bitterness. She stayed silent for over 40 years, and when she finally spoke, she didn't speak in anger. She spoke in grief, in honesty, and in a kind of hard-won peace that most people never reach. That's the story Karen Grassle had been holding all along, and it was worth every year of the wait. If this story moved you, share it, because some truths deserve to finally be heard.